I hear from a lot of pharmacy owners, there's a lot of mythology out there, if you will, that it'll just get delayed again. And, there's a lot of complaining about, the burden on pharmacies and why do we have to pay for all of this. And I think a lot of pharmacies don't really understand the consequences of inaction, because so far, no regulatory agency is like walked into a pharmacy, and asking for this. And I think for pharmacies that have been in compounding and maybe some other regulatory things, there's a lag between what's required and what you might be inspected for. And in our recent conversations, we've talked about how state boards of pharmacies have really stepped up their internal training on the DSCSA requirements for pharmacies. And that is who pharmacies really need to worry about, is that local board inspector. Most boards of pharmacies obviously inspect once a year. Many of them have initiatives, as I've looked up different boards of pharmacies, to inspect twice a year. So if you're a pharmacy owner, that is who I would be worried about, is coming in and getting your board of pharmacy. And what is the downside of that? Obviously, board of pharmacies have authority to fine. I think each state, I don't think there's like a federal guideline for fining. Am I correct, Tish? There's not like is there a federal guidance, or is that up to each state?
No, the FDA can enforce as well, and they can go into court and obtain court orders. And of course, as we know, you can also go to jail over
Right.
this.
Well, yeah, there's jail.
It's
For
jail.
most, there's jail. For most pharmacies, that FDA is not going to be coming into most pharmacies. It's that state board of pharmacy, and state board of pharmacies, as a lot of us all know all too well, their form of punishment is fines, and it's being written up, and then it's being, more inspected by the board of pharmacy and getting on their, radar, so to speak, as somebody who's being non-compliant. And if you're non-compliant with this, what else are you non-compliant with? And the other thing that I worry about, and I've tried to reach out to a couple of insurers, is if there's a gold standard in the industry and you are blatantly non-compliant with it, how that might affect your liability insurance. And, I don't get quite, as straight of answer as I would like, because, everybody's policies and everything's are different. But the feeling that I get from the insurers is you may be putting your pharmacy at risk if you do some other mistake, but you're not doing this thing correctly. It can actually open you up to liability, if you're getting sued or something that happens from a bad patient interaction or something. So I think there's a lot of liability here that a lot of pharmacists just don't realize. And I think we're relying too much on the mythology that somebody else is going to fix this for us. It's going to get delayed again. I mean, as great as the NACDS, request and submission to the FDA to delay, it continues to like feed this false hope of pharmacy owners, because it got delayed last year, right at the last minute when the FDA swore, for months that they weren't delaying it, and then it got delayed. And I just think a lot of pharmacy owners think that it's going to get delayed. I think they also think that, and I'd love your guys' feedback on this, of somebody else is taking care for me. My primary wholesaler says they've got it covered, that I don't have to do anything. I have seen actual emails from wholesaler sales reps telling their pharmacies, you don't have to do anything. We have it all covered. And I've tried to explain to these pharmacies that that might be the case in terms of data handling, but you need SOPs, you need to show training, you have to be able to access that data. And then what happens if you purchase from outside that wholesaler? And so we all know that pharmacies, and I advocate for pharmacies all the time to purchase outside their primary wholesalers. And so I'd love to hear from the team, and I'm sure the pharmacies on here would love to hear of, like, what do you do in that case with, if your primary wholesaler is quote unquote, taking care of it for them, but they also purchase for others, how do you navigate those two buckets there?
Yeah, Dr. Faast, well said. Thank you. You hit the nail on the head there. One thing I did want to bring up, outside of just DSCSA compliance, what I'm hearing from pharmacies as well, I feel like I've been traveling the country, visiting every pharmacy show there is on the planet, speaking with pharmacy after pharmacy. And what I'm hearing, number one, as you said, liability insurance. The insurers are starting to ask questions. Do you have a DSCSA solution? Can you provide your SOPs? Because that does open up a liability. And if you don't have a system in place, they do have the ability to raise your rates. You're viewed as a risky operation for them. Second, I've heard of the PBMs. Everyone loves PBMs, right? I've heard PBMs are now asking questions to the pharmacy and asking about their DSCSA. Do you have a solution in place? Can you prove it to me? And if you don't have a solution, I've heard that they have the ability to do clawbacks. So, one thing that really resonates as I speak to pharmacies personally is just weighing the pros and cons, the benefits. What are the benefits of this versus just not doing anything, and the risks, right? So on the benefit, I really want to just hit on those for a second. So one, outside of just being compliant, pharmacies, healthcare, we're all here for the patient. At the end of the day, what we're all here to do is provide care for the patients. And from a supply chain, for DSCSA, it's secure the supply chain and prevent counterfeit drugs from entering the market. That's what we're here to do. That's what DSCSA is. And so from that perspective, one, just DSCSA in general, you're protecting your patients and you're doing the right thing. You're taking the step towards, making your pharmacy secure and closing that gap or that loop in the supply chain. But number two, there's a ton of benefits. Number one is inventory management. LSPedia, for example, our solution is integrated with your pharmacy management system. So whether you're using your PMS system right now for inventory or not, the serialized data component makes that significant, a significant improvement in your inventory. And now you're actually able to, clearly track your inventory and your dispensing through your PMS system. And number two on that front is expiration management. With all this data, with the serialized data, you have the information on every product that you're receiving, and that comes with the expiration date in that serialized EPCIS file. So now, a lot of pharmacies still go through the old school method of, maybe once a month, taking hours the entire day to go through every single product on your shelf, looking at the bottle, looking at the expiration date, and putting it in a box. Well, by utilizing the serialized data and using a system like LSPedia, you can just pull the report and see exactly what products that you have in your pharmacy that are expiring in the next 30, 60, 90 days. Now that process can take 15 minutes instead of 12 hours and 3 people's, workload. So those two pieces alone, but number one is the biggest difference maker for a pharmacy that I hear about is just the receiving process. There are so many pharmacies that still do, whether you're doing the sticker method upon receiving, or you're opening that tote and comparing the paper invoice to the products and using your eyes. If your receiving process is taking more than 20 minutes, you're going to see a dramatic increase in productivity utilizing DSCSA and a system like LSPedia, because what we're able to do is now your receiving process can be 10 minutes. All you have to do is either open that tote and scan every item, and our system will handle that reconciliation process for you. Or you can just scan the tote, or you can auto receive that whole order as long as you have additional steps in your SOPs to ensure that at least the quantity is right there. But there's so many benefits. And for the price, I think there's a lot of misconception in the market about how expensive is DSCSA compliance for a pharmacy. Let's just be honest, depending on what systems you're purchasing this through, it could be as low as $50 a month and as high as $100 a month or $120 a month. That's not a significant impact compared to the risks of your insurance going up, your fines by PBM or clawbacks by PBMs, fines. And one thing too is I would be proud of it. If I was a pharmacy owner, if I'm DSCSA compliant, I'd be proud of that. And I'd be, yelling it from the rooftops, and I'd put a sign in my pharmacy saying, we are a secure pharmacy. Our prescription drugs that we purchase are safe, and we've taken the steps to do what we need to do. So, all those pieces combined, it's just a no-brainer. And once we explain that to a pharmacy and actually have that conversation, it does trigger that light. It's like, yeah, it makes sense. I'm just going to get this done. And to your point, Dr. Faast, about their primary supplier covering it, we get that question all the time. I've been to all the primary supplier conferences, and at those conferences, that they are not telling everyone that we have you covered. What they're telling everyone is we have the data available for you if you need it. But if you buy from more than just us, you need to have a third-party solution. You need to have a solution that aggregates the data from all of your suppliers into one place. But on top of that, there's so much more for DSCSA compliance than just the data. You have to, as you mentioned, authorize trading partners. How are you validating and managing your trading partner licenses? Like LSPedia system, we handle that for you. your SOPs. We provide you with a 40-page SOP template that you can use. But saleable returns. Let's talk about that. Even if you're a small dispenser and hit and have that exemption for another 2 years on certain requirements, if you're buying from more than one provider, that issue of who did you buy the product from comes into place. Because whether you're exempt or not, your suppliers are only going to accept saleable returns if you purchase that product from them. So that's another reason where serialization comes into play. And verification, as Tish mentioned, you need to have systems for verification. And then ASN. I mean, let's not forget about lot level tracking. You still need to be at least having the data. If you're not capturing serialized data, you still need to be tracking that lot level data, which we all handle for you. So I know that was very long-winded and a lot, but there's just a lot of bad information out there in the market. And at the end of the day, it makes sense, and it's just easier for you to just have a system in place.
I completely agree. I think pharmacy owners, even if you're technically exempt, to me, for all the benefits that you just talked about with the increase of production, the effect on workflow is one of the clumsiest things in pharmacies. I think this provides a very low cost solution for all of that, even if you're not required to do it for another 2 years because you meet that exemption. To me, it's the cost benefit analysis is very much on the benefit side. So thank you for that.